Well, welcome back, everybody, to D_rock_YT. My name is Derek Rogers, of course, and I have with me a special guest today who I've been excited to get on. It's Fred Williams from Real Science Radio, and he is, I'll give you a bit of background on him. I heard about him and Bob Enyart, his co-host, years ago when I used to watch Real Science Radio, and I still do, by the way, and just love their program. They touch on creation topics, young Earth. They go through all types of different arguments on why today's sciences are inaccurate when it comes to what God actually did and what He says He did. So today we're going to be talking about the three Ds, and this is an argument for uh, evidence for God, evidence for creation.
My king's coming back, that's what I'm banking on. We eat and celebrate the grace of God with that filet mignon. I'm just saying we came a long way.
Fred Williams, he is a software engineer, has a Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering, and he works as a senior firmware engineer for Micron Technology, working on NAND modeling, which I know a little bit about, but you can explain a bit more. I know it has to do with memory and logic, but yeah, so he has this background in engineering, which I always find really hands-on scientists are engineers, right? They're the ones applying the sciences in the real world and doing amazing things. So, Fred, I want to just turn it to you to share your story of how you even got into this topic, especially with your background, and who you are. Just share a little bit about it.
Okay. Well, for the first 30 years of my life, I didn't necessarily believe in evolution, monkeys to man evolution. I never gave it much thought. I actually went to a public school that didn't really push that, but they did push millions of years. And they pushed dinosaurs lived millions of years ago. So for 30 years of my life, I was also a carnal Catholic at the time. I was a believer, but I didn't go to, I was a creaster, Christmas and Easter kind of Christian. And so I had this background of believing millions of years. And one day at work, a guy, he said that evolution's a proven fact. And I'm like, well, that seems a little bit extreme. I've never heard it as a proven fact. And so I started looking into it, and a lot of things were converging at the same time. I also had started watching this guy that was on TV. Normally, I don't watch Christians on TV, preachers, because a lot of them are phony. And they really are. Tons of them are, unfortunately. And I was only watching to irritate myself. Sometimes you like watching a train wreck, a car wreck. You're the guy looking over. And so I tuned into this guy, and his name is Bob Enyart. And I watched an episode, and I found myself, this guy's actually pretty good. So then I started watching more and more, and I'd be laughing at some of the stuff he said, laughing in a good way. I mean, he was making some brilliant arguments. And at that time, it was a show that was about not just news and the latest news. He got into Christian apologetics, the Bible, and creation science. So that got me interested. And again, with this guy at work saying it's a proven fact, I started looking into it. And it wasn't long, maybe a course of over a couple months, maybe a little more, that I realized I'd been brainwashed for 30 years. I'd never heard any of the arguments against billions of years, against evolution. I just had never heard them. And you're not going to hear them in the public schools. You're not going to hear those arguments on TV. You're going to be indoctrinated if you go to a museum, the zoo. So part of me was kind of angry at myself for being brainwashed like that. And so some of the research I started doing, the very first book that I bought was given to me by my former pastor, who's now retired, Philip Cameron. He gave me a book called What is Science by Gary Parker. So that's what got me going down the trail. I've got that book on my shelf over here just because it's the very first creation book I ever had. And so, I just kept digging deeper and deeper. I ended up creating a website called Evolution.
Yeah, I should mention that you have multiple websites that you kind of oversee, and I've looked at a couple of them. I looked at the Bible Evidences .com website. Are you still doing stuff with that?
I
Or?
do maintain it, and I try to, but and every now and then I'll put an article on there. But yeah, BibleEvidences.com. That one I started, if I'm not mistaken, it was 1998. So that one's been around a long time. And about that same time, I started EvolutionFairyTale.com. That had done
Right, and I've been on there too.
yeah
I've been looking at the blog,
yeah the
catching some of
forum
the
yeah.
yes, the forum.
Now the forum was really popular at one time, and then over time it just kind of people just kind of started dropping off. I made a SEO mistake at one point, and I know we were talking before the show about your expertise in SEO, where I made a critical mistake, and Google just killed me in the rankings. The forum now is pretty much unfortunately there's probably some forum people that might listen to your show. But to me, it's a bunch of old guys, or a bunch of guys in a barbershop now that just bicker back and forth.
Yeah,
But it's served a really good purpose. Those kind of forums are great for learning your opponent's arguments, because when you're debating an evolutionist or an atheist, they're going to be the best people to vet any argument you have, because they're going to do every little thing they can do to find out what's wrong with it. And so you learn a lot, and you learn a lot about science and how to do apologetics by engaging with those who oppose your view. So
yes. I just wanted to mention off the top too that Real Science Radio used to be always audio only, and then there were occasionally you would have some YouTube videos that were out there. But I'm so glad that you guys are now on YouTube and you have an RSR channel. Is it just at RSR?
So yeah, the YouTube channel is youtube.com/@realscienceradio.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and so it's going well. We're learning different things, and we're doing everything we can to improve the channel, and it's been a lot of fun, actually.
Yeah, I'm finding that too. It's fun to play around with. I do it as a side hobby, with my full-time work, and just when I get to it, I can do it, and it's awesome, especially when something clicks and you get a lot of response and activity on it. That's awesome to see.
Yeah, yep. Yeah, our first shows to really click were our Man in the Street interviews. Those were really popular. And then we've had some other shows really click, since then. And, I was mentioning to you off air, Professor Dave Explains is a huge YouTube channel with 3.5 million subscribers. So we decided to do a video series against claims they made that creationists make, that said that they were debunking. So we did our own shows. Right. Yeah, debunking.
Like a straw man.
Yeah, exactly. So we did shows on debunking Professor Dave, and we did 4 of those. Well, lo and behold, not that long ago, he actually posted a response video. So we're now preparing a response to his video, and that kind of activity is really good for us. It's good for people, for his audience, to hear different viewpoints. That video he did against us, Derek, it already has, as of our recording this, it has 260,000 views after just 3 days. So
that's awesome.
Yeah,
and that's that may be a negative attention, but it's bringing attention to your channel, right?
Yeah, yeah.
That's good. This is my thesis right now, is that we talked about this a little bit before the show, that everybody's questioning the narrative now. There's good and bad in that, of course, but I think the good that's coming is that people are questioning evolution and realizing the extreme pushback, where there's legitimate science that questions evolution. If you follow the science, it doesn't lead to evolution. It leads away from it.
Mm-hmm.
But there's such a pushback from the mainstream science, with legal lawsuits and actions, discrediting people in the sciences because they believe something different, that people are starting to see through this facade that, this is, like I was saying, it's like a psyop that's been put on the people to make them believe a certain way.
Yeah, psyop, that's good.
Yeah, and I've always, ever since, learning about evolution in school, I've always had questions about it. And when I became a Christian later in life, I now fully believe that evolution as defined in Neo-Darwinian evolution we're talking molecules to man doesn't happen. The things that do happen agree with a creation perspective, and that's more adaptation within kinds that we see. We do see adaptation. They'll call that evolution in their arguments. So today we're going to talk about these 3Ds. So let's get into it. You want to just share a little bit, maybe a
Yeah.
10,000 foot overview, and then we'll dig in. We got some slides to go with this.
Yeah, sure. So a couple of years ago, before Bob Ehnert passed away, I was with him at the last conference he did. We did a conference down in San Antonio, or a town near San Antonio. And one of the things we came up with was, what's a good way to remember, the really important arguments that we have to support the biblical account of creation. And so you've got evolution that you mentioned. You've got the belief that the earth is millions of years old. All of that flies in the face of Genesis, and if you don't, Satan's really clever. If he can make people doubt the very first book of the Bible, why read the rest, or why believe the rest? So we came up with this 3Ds. So whenever someone asks me, hey, what's your evidence for creation? It's easy to pull that out of my, just remember that, the 3Ds, because sometimes if someone asks you and you're kind of, maybe your brain, you're tired that day or something, what is the evidence for creation? I've been doing this for 20 years. Well, the 3Ds helps us remember that, helps other people remember. So the 3Ds are dinosaurs, diamonds, and DNA. So dinosaurs, they're going to get to, this whole paradigm that dinosaurs died out millions of years ago, which goes against the Bible. Then you got diamonds, and that has to do with the age of the earth. And then DNA is just going to totally obliterate what, as you refer to, Neo-Darwinism or the modern synthesis, and it just totally destroys it. And we've had Sal Cordova on some fantastic shows where he shows documentation from the evolutionists, where they admit, there's some evolutionists that admit the modern synthesis, which is Neo-Darwinism, is dead. They admit that. And so, but they're still going to teach this. It's brainwashing. And so the 3Ds are real important to us, but we always start off with dinosaurs, because pretty much most everybody's interested in dinosaurs. You can always get a conversation going with somebody who's not a believer. You can just start talking about dinosaurs, and it's amazing where you can go with that.
Before you go further, do you think there's actually an Ogopogo or a living dinosaur somewhere on the earth right now?
Which one was that? What was the...
Ogopogo is one. There's all the Loch Ness monster.
Yeah. I think it's entirely possible, because, the places where they're seeing those creatures is in a very remote part of Africa that's not very well explored. It's roughly the size of Arkansas. And it's dangerous back there. But when explorers have gone in there and they talk to the natives and they show them pictures of dinosaurs, and I'm like, yeah, we've seen that. So is it 100% concrete? No. But one of the things that, I have a presentation I give on dinosaurs, and there's a lot of creationists that give great presentations on them. We show the evidence where it's pretty overwhelming that people lived with dinosaurs. But evolutionists will never tell you that that's true. They think dinosaurs died out like 60 to 80 million years ago. And they think that, we branched off from the apes. A common ancestor with the apes roughly 3 to 5 million years ago. And so that doesn't work with, you're not going to have humans living with dinosaurs. Yet we have all kinds of evidences that they did. So it totally refutes that narrative of theirs. So they fight tooth and nail against it.
Yeah, I mean, there's all well, I'm sure we're going to get into a little bit about the artifacts and legends and historical things throughout the earth that kind of show that man and dinosaurs coexisted. It's not just the Flintstones.
Yeah, that's right. And, of course, we've got the most powerful argument of all, probably easily the paleontological discovery of the century that totally refutes dinosaurs living millions of years ago. And, we can mention that now, or I can save it for the end of the dinosaur presentation. But it's the most powerful evidence there is. It's overwhelming. And maybe...
Let's save it. Let's go into it a little bit.
Okay.
And then hold that thought.
Okay. Sounds good. So, right now, you're seeing a slide that I put together for on dinosaurs, and it's the evolutionists' favorite evangelism tool. So they start with dinosaurs and selling this whole concept, with our kids, right out of preschool and, early education. So, for example, from this Dr. Seuss book, you can see that it's talking about dinosaurs, and it says they're not hundreds of years, not thousands of years, but millions of years long before you were born. So they start indoctrinating kids on this right away, right in preschool and later. And it's why Bob and I would always encourage parents to not send your kids to public schools, because they're going to get indoctrinated with this 5 days a week, as opposed to you maybe telling them it's not true once a week or once on Sunday if you go to a conservative, biblically based church. So the propaganda starts right away.
Can't believe they got Dr. Seuss.
Yeah.
I'm disappointed.
Yeah. Yeah, it is disappointing. And, it's just all over the place. When you take your kids to the museum, the zoo, they're all going to hear this kind of stuff. So, but we've always had really good evidence that people lived with dinosaurs. So, for example, here's a picture of a pictograph from this canyon in the Grand Canyon National Park, and obviously that looks like a dinosaur. And you can't say that it was done like recently or, like even in the last 100 years, because there's desert varnish on that rock that just shows this was done, much longer, a long time ago. And generally evolutionists don't dispute that. They agree that these are drawings made long ago by these cultures that lived in America, these Indians, of dinosaurs. And here's, a close-up, the dinosaur that it actually represents, the Admonosaur.
Would their argument be that maybe it's, something else that, kind of looked like that, or a fictitious character that they made up? Or
that's a good question, and it varies. But the most common I've heard, and I'll share the next slide because this is, like the pterodactyl that you see in this one. They claim, the most prevalent claim I hear is, the Indians, they were also paleontologists. So,
Okay.
Yeah, so they dug these bones up and they drew pictures of them. That's one of the things that I hear. Probably the most prevalent that I hear, other than just ignoring the problem. If they do actually try to address it and make a comment on it, it's generally, they also, dug up bones and drew depictions of them. So
Interesting. I had not heard of that one before.
And there may be others that are more popular than that, but for me personally, when I've debated evolutionists, which I did almost on a daily basis for at least a 10-year period, this is what, we would hear. There's these burial stones that they found in these Peruvian tombs. We're showing a picture of it. What does that look like? That creature on that Peruvian tomb that is from 500 to 1500 AD, it clearly is a Triceratops.
Now, with these, I remember hearing that there was some controversy with the Peruvian stones. Do you know much about that?
I've heard some of that, but this has been a while since this particular slide that I put together, this slide. And at the time, I was always careful to research everything and make sure this isn't some kind of hoax or anything like that. And I didn't hear of anything that was not the usual bluster from evolutionists is trying to find a way out. So if there's something new, I'm always willing to consider that.
I believe it was that there had been some carved later and kind of added to the collection, but I think that was debunked because further collections were found with the same drawings on them.
Okay.
So it was likely somebody trying to debunk it.
Yeah, like the Paluxy footprints, and
Right.
what happened there. So it could be related also, Derek. On this next slide, there are these figurines they discovered in Mexico, and I know that they were trying to say that these were done later. But when this one guy went down there to try to refute them, he dug under the police chief's house and found more of them. So he pretty much agreed these things are real, and you can see pictures of these different dinosaur figurines that came from this Chipacuaro culture from 800 BC to 200 AD. So these people clearly saw dinosaurs. And I did want to mention on that previous slide with the Triceratops, there's a person riding the Triceratops. So
Yeah.
they lived with them. This was an interesting one because the iguanodon, there was incorrect early drawings from 1875. And then as you see, as time goes on, the drawings improve, but they're still wrong. And then they ended up finding fossilized tendons in the tail that showed that the tail did not droop, but it stood out straight. And that's the iguanodon as we know it today. And yet in these same figurines that they found, they've got a dinosaur with a tail sticking out straight. So it's what they looked like when these people saw them 2,500 years ago. This was always pretty good evidence that, people saw dinosaurs.
So I know, there's people watching this program that have learned that the dinosaurs went extinct in some catastrophic event millions and millions of years ago, whether it was an asteroid that hit or something, maybe another type of flood event that wasn't the flood.
Yep. Yeah.
There's so many different theories. So what do you say to them? I mean, why are they not alive today? Why don't we see them wandering the earth? What do you say to that?
Okay. So that's a good question. And, you mentioned earlier that there may still be some alive, but, like other animals that, they went extinct over time. There's stories of Alexander the Great, men of his, fighting a dragon in India. And, it would be a major prize for a man to kill a dinosaur because they're huge, great creatures. And like the buffalo, which didn't completely go extinct, just man over time killed them all off. And that's what we would say happened to them. And again, there could be some still alive. You could almost argue that some are still alive, and even you could say maybe alligators, crocodiles, they have an appearance of dinosaurs. But, and the whole asteroid thing, there's a lot of evidence against that. We could go into that, but I'm showing a slide right now, and it's all these different theories that they've come up with that what happened to the dinosaurs. So it's not just the asteroid. They've come up with a whole bunch of other ones. I used to show this slide and then play the Darth Vader music in the background. Dun, 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 dun. We can't play the Darth Vader ground in the background while we're doing this video for YouTube because it'll mark it as, copyright music. So just in your mind, play the Darth Vader Imperial March in the back of your head as I read this list. So some of the theories: cataracts led to blindness. Shrinking brain led to stupidity, and they just died because they were stupid. Chronic constipation. These are all reported. These are all theories by evolutionists. Overeating. Well, no. Another guy says no. Starvation. Poisonous plants. Mass suicide. So I don't know what that's all about. They all just jumped off a cliff at the same time. Dinosaur wars. And then back in the AIDS epidemic, they were blaming it on AIDS. Somehow the dinosaurs got AIDS. And on the Bill O'Reilly show, a scientist was on there and says, oh, no, it was global warming killed the dinosaurs. So a lot of these guys realize the asteroid theory isn't as solid as they want you to think it is. So they've come up with all kinds of ideas what killed the dinosaurs. But again, we say that it was just man over time wiped them out, and they went extinct.
Yeah, so I mean, there was a mass slaughter event, obviously, with the flood that happened.
Yes.
But they were not killed off in the flood. They were actually rescued with all the other animals.
That's right. So they would have been on the ark.
Animals.
And people say, well, how do you get a big brontosaurus, which is now an apatosaurus? They changed the name. How do you get an apatosaurus on the ark? Well, you don't need a fully grown adult because these kind of animals, they tend to continue to grow their entire lives. So all you need is baby dinosaurs. The average size, I think, if I recall, of a dinosaur is really the size of a dog. So you don't need to take the full-grown ones on the ark. They would have all been on the ark, the different kinds of dinosaurs. And again, as came off the ark, they just over time, man killed them off. So
awesome. Yeah, I went in a little bit with the interview with Ian Juby, where we looked at some of the dinosaur tracks, where you know they've been proven to be real now, in the was it the Paluxy River bed,
Yep.
and some of the other places where there's hundreds and hundreds of tracks that have been uncovered under layers of sediment, and some crisscrossing human footprints. So we have lots of evidence that dinosaurs coexisted with man.
Yeah, exactly. And they did a real, as hard as they could, they did a hatchet job on Carl Baugh, who, he has a museum down in Texas, and they've got a lot of that material of actual human footprints, in the Paluxy area with dinosaur footprints. So,
Yeah.
yeah, there's always been a lot of evidence. I'm now showing a slide of the Carlisle Cathedral in northern England, and if you go in there, there's a carpet above the tomb of Bishop Richard Bell. He died in 1496. Well, look what's engraved on his tombstone. Do you think someone went in there later after the fact to do that, to try to prove that men lived with dinosaurs? No. This is very compelling that, these guys saw and dinosaurs existed back in that time.
Yeah, it's all, you can see the brass is all worn out from
Yeah.
walking on it on top of the carpet.
But clearly, those are dinosaurs. There's no doubt about it. And then the Khmer civilization, this is Cambodia from the 8th to the 14th century. If you go there, there's this structure, this pole. You could almost say a totem pole, and it's got different animals on it. It's got monkeys, the deer, water buffalo, and parrots. Okay, well, that's interesting. And it also has this animal on it. Now, what is that doing on there? This thing, again, is from, centuries ago. It's got a stegosaurus on there. It's unquestionable. And, Indian societies have all kinds of accounts of stegosauruses tipping over their canoes, and it's not written as some sort of myth,
Great.
Powerful evidence. And then you look at the Chinese calendar. Try to tell the Chinese they have a myth on their calendar, because they've got a dragon on their calendar. And the Chinese, many do not buy into the evolution of dinosaurs being died out millions of years ago, because they've got an actual creature on their calendar. So
Yeah, that's interesting. Every other creature is a real creature, and then why is this mythological one on there?
exactly. And I like to tell the story of when my wife and I went to Shanghai, China. I was there on a business trip, and I don't like to travel. At that point in my life, I didn't want to travel, but they kind of bribed me by saying they'd pay my wife all my wife's expenses to go with me. And I remember I telling my wife, hey, they want me to go to China. She's like, oh, you don't like to travel. I'm like, yeah, but my boss says he'll completely pay for your way to go. Oh, you should go to China. Yeah, let's go to. So we went to the Shanghai Museum in China. Really interesting place. I'd recommend it if you're in Shanghai. And they have lots of different things with dinosaurs engraved on them. And one of the things is like bed frames. Imagine right now today, I walk into your house, Derek, and if you have a bed frame with Buzz Lightyear carved on it, I'm going to think, hey, Sandy, let's get out of here. This guy's kind of weird. I mean, who's going to put a mythical creature on their bed frame? The Chinese have dinosaurs, dragons, on their bed frame. So there's no way these things were extinct from millions of years ago. They have it on their calendar. Dragons are just dinosaurs of the past.
Right. Yeah.
Yep. So that's, it's clear the Chinese lived with the dinosaurs. And people ask, well, are dinosaurs mentioned in the Bible? Yes, but the word dinosaur itself was not invented until 1841, after the King James Version was translated. So you're not going to find the actual word dinosaur in the Bible. But guess what? You're not going to find the word internet in the Bible, or nanotechnology in the Bible. Solid state drives. You're not going to find that in the Bible. So, but you do find descriptions of dinosaurs in the Bible, and many of your audience maybe are familiar with some of those, like from Job chapter 40, where it talks about Behemoth. And it says he moves his tail like a cedar tree. His bones are as strong as pieces of brass. and they're like bars of irons. He is the chief in the ways of God. And yet, some of the translations of the Bible, this animal had already died out. They speculated that the tail was like of a hippopotamus or an elephant. But if you compare the tail of you look at the tail of an elephant, does that look like a cedar tree to you? The tail, no. It just doesn't work. And then there's Leviathan, out of his mouth go burning lamps and sparks of fire leap out. We've got creatures today that do that, the bombardier beetle. Well, there are dinosaurs that can, in fact, there's mechanisms. We already have mechanisms today, but there could easily be a mechanism in some of these dinosaurs that could spit out fire based on this design that God would have done. So it's just not that inconceivable that you actually had fire-breathing dragons, and people can look into it. So, when you put a lot of vegetable material in a confined space with no oxygen, guess what? It decomposes and produces methane gas. So all you would need as a dinosaur is a spark and some kind of design to prevent yourself from being burned on your nostrils, and you have a fire-breathing dragon. It's just not that inconceivable. And again,
if I'm not mistaken, did they not find a fossilized dinosaur that had tubes running down its neck to its stomach?
I believe so. Yeah, and this picture we're showing now of the Parasaurolophus, I hope I said that right. This dinosaur looks like, has all the makings of being able to, breathe fire. So it's totally conceivable.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That is really kind of cool to think about.
So we had been talking about this stuff for years, and then now here comes the punchline, the thing we mentioned earlier, the tease we said about how there's overwhelming evidence now that dinosaurs were contemporary with man and died out not that long ago. It's the fact that Dr. Mary Schweitzer found unfossilized soft tissue in T-Rex bones, which was a remarkable find. It's the find of the century in paleontology. And Derek, unfortunately, still a lot of people don't even know about this. More and more people there's a growing population of people who are aware of it, but really the general public, by and large, doesn't know about this because they're not mentioning this stuff in the schools because it goes against their paradigm of dinosaurs living millions of years ago.
I think, I was talking about some of the oligarchs are falling. There's a lot of people questioning the narrative on things. This is one thing that people need to dive into more is this. To me, this is irrefutable evidence. They come up with theories that could explain how there could be DNA in red blood cells in fossilized material, still alive, or still not alive, but still there and able to be observed. But it can't last that long. And most people don't know about it, like you said. This is something that should be blowing up on Twitter or on X.
Yeah.
There should just be people going, what is going on here? And hopefully that starts to happen more.
Yeah, absolutely. Because this was really reported in the late 1990s. So it's been around a while, and still not enough people know about it. And here's this quote from Dr. Mary Schweitzer. She said it was exactly like looking at a slice of modern bone. And by the way, these things smelled like cadavers in the lab, by the way. So she said, but of course, I couldn't believe it. I said to the lab technician, the bones are, after all, 65 million years old. How could blood cells survive that long? Well, guess what? They can't. And here's another slide where I'm just showing what they found, pictures of the T-Rex elastic tissue. It's just remarkable what they've found. And again, here's Mary Schweitzer, and this is MSNBC. This isn't a news outlet favorable to creation. They're pretty left-wing, I would say. And here's what she said. It was totally shocking. The finding certainly shows fossilization does not proceed as science had assumed. She's still going to she still believes the millions of years because she's so indoctrinated and wants to defend the millions of years. But they have to come up with weird theories to try to explain it. So Bob Binyard, I'm showing a list right now. He came up with a long, huge list of all these discoveries of creatures that have, not just dinosaurs, they've found soft tissue in them. Brian Thomas of ICR is now maintaining this list, but it's remarkable that a biomaterial that they're finding, and these are all papers from the secular journals. Harvard, Stanford, they're all on board with this. They don't say that it's, they agree that it's the original biological material. It's not some, fossilized mat of it that kind of outlines it. It's actual biological material. And so here's the other things they found. They found, this tissue.
I'm just going to mention that I will link some of these resources in the description as well if people want to go check them out after this video.
Yeah, and I'm showing some of them on the screen right now. And even Archaeopteryx, it contains remnants of the feathers of soft tissue. And of course, New Scientist magazine says it's amazing that the chemistry is preserved after 150 million years. Well, yeah, that is amazing. How about maybe that thing isn't that old?
No, that can't be a possibility.
Yeah. So, how Mary Schweitzer and others have tried to explain this, they say that iron somehow preserved this material so it could last millions of years. Well, so researchers, they ended up they did a test of this theory of Mary Schweitzer's, and they totally refuted it. So what they did was they placed 4 raw chicken femurs, thigh bones, in sand, and each of the bones was subjected to different solutions percolating through the sand. One was just pure water, and the others were calcium carbonate, phosphate, and iron solutions. And here's a picture of what they observed and what happened. Iron was the absolute worst at preserving the soft tissue and the collagen. So it turned out that iron was the worst preservative. 65% of the collagen had decayed in only 3 months. And these things are supposed to be millions of years old. So that argument is dead. Science has disproven it. Science that you can observe and repeat in the lab.
Which is the real science.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
What you can see with your own eyes. His invisible attributes are clearly seen by the things that are made. So if you think about how the Bible wants to defend God's creation, it appeals to things that we can observe. Every house is built. We know every house has a builder. That's from Hebrews 3:4. And right. Jesus said, if you don't believe me, believe my works. And how are you going to believe his works? You look at the miracles he's done at that time. It's like it's irrefutable. So another one, Derek, that's a favorite of mine that I always like doing this. So for your show, I went to Rational Wiki. I've been doing this for years. I go to Rational Wiki and I see if they've updated their article, and they still haven't. So this is now.
I think I've seen this article.
Yeah.
Previously on RSR, you guys had mentioned it. So.
Yeah. So this is from Rational Wiki, which is run by atheists and evolutionists, from December of 2024. They still haven't changed it. They say it would take around 100,000 years for all the DNA in a sample to decay to undetectable levels. So it says this: if fossils of the dinosaurs were less than 6,000 years old, detectable fragments of DNA should be present. Well, thank you. They are.
Bingo.
And this is from the journal Bone from January 2013. And they showed that there's evidence there's data that supports that they're finding DNA in this soft tissue. DNA is very fragile. It doesn't last long. You can watch TV shows, forensic science shows, and know that that's true. And yet they think this DNA can survive millions of years. It can't. And even the evolutionists admit that if the fossils of the dinosaurs are less than 6,000 years old, you should be able to find fragments of DNA. And guess what we did? I'm surprised they haven't removed this article, but hey, I'll keep referencing it. I've been doing it probably for over a decade now. I mean, the journal Bone, that was, 11 years ago. I've been showing this slide for 15 years, and I'll keep showing it until they correct it. I'll still show it. Just say, hey, they finally corrected it in, Yeah. They finally corrected it in January of 2030. Who knows
And
when?
their correction will not be conceding the argument. It'll be some other explanation
Exactly.
for how it
Exactly.
possibly happened. Yeah.
So, yeah, this is just, the evidence for dinosaurs not being millions of years old is just slam dunk overwhelming. You just can't get around it. And by the way, Derek, I forgot to mention, we had Carl Baugh on, I don't know, maybe about a year ago. Their lab, they've found soft tissue, and this is with Brian Thomas of ICR, legitimate scientist, and so is Carl Baugh, by the way. They found soft tissue in trilobites. Now, those things are supposed to be, what, 1 billion plus years old. They're finding soft tissue in trilobites, actual biological material. Unbelievable. Fascinating.
Those are the bottom of the geological scale, right?
Yeah, pretty much, even though they're incredibly complex creatures that somehow just show up out of nowhere in the evolutionary, worldview, timescale.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to this episode of D_Rock_YT, where we just had Fred Williams doing part 1 of the 2-part series, I should say. 3 genres, 3 discussion topic points. Dinosaurs, diamonds, and DNA. We've got through dinosaurs. The next 2 are in the next episode. Diamonds and DNA. Stay tuned for that. Please like, subscribe, and share. Don't forget to let your friends know about this. If you wanted to start a discussion, if you're interested in this topic, make sure you like and subscribe. Leave a comment if you have some questions. Don't forget that if you need prayer, put prayer or prayer request, and your prayer request in the comments, and I will be sure to pray for you. Now, that's if you want it to be publicly known, because, of course, it's going to be sitting there in the comments section. But the thing is, there's other people that watch my programs that also want to pray for people. So feel free to do that. We will pray for you. And I'll make a little comment there just to say that I got it and I am praying for you. Thank you. We will see you on the flip side. All the best. Merry Christmas.
We gon' to reaching the top of the summit. I was about yay high when Yahweh told me to run it. Only a matter of time before my mob need a hit and 100. I swore a sign, he told me to pay more attention, he already done it.